So the first one, the most obvious one that everybody is talking about, is the compelled speech, right? The requirement to say this like specific blurb that mirrors Justice Germain's opinions about things, but does not mirror the Pawlowskis. So we have a serious concern about that, a serious concern about whether or not that's constitutional or not. But in addition to that, I mean, it's the same thing that I've been harping on since, frankly, May 10th when we had the release hearing, which is the police should not have arrested the Pawlowskis. Church was over. There was no further public health risk going on with them going home for the rest of the weekend.
So there you have it. Rebel News, along with Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, will be in court and will be appealing this troubling ruling from the very beginning. We're going to go back to the original finding of guilty on contempt charges, as well as the troubling and unsettling sentencing, including compelled speech. We will be fighting those, but we can't do that without your help. We need you to go to saveartur.com now. You can make a contribution to help with these legal fees.
Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and after hearing Justice Adam Germain's bizarre sentencing for Pastor Artur Pawlowski, which included, among other things, massive fines and, worst of all, 18 months of compelled speech, we let you know that we planned to appeal that bizarre ruling right away. After all, Pastor Artur Pawlowski was incurring the wrath of the government for, of all things, daring to feed the homeless and open his church and welcome everybody despite COVID restrictions. Well, Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, who has been provided as legal counsel to Pastor Artur for free, thanks to your generosity at saveartur.com, is joining me today, and she has been hard at work. That appeal is going to be filed today. So if you could just let us know maybe about the process. Obviously an extremely bizarre ruling from Justice Adam Germain, some bizarre comments as well. What is the appeal process and what are the grounds for the appeal?
So the appeal process is a lengthy process, like most things in court. For those who have been following the story, this has been going on since May. We're nearly 6 months in now, or like going on 7, whatever that math ends up being. Yeah. We expect that an appeal will probably be a year. So there is that kind of delay procedure. But the first thing we're going to do is apply, or we have applied actually, to have the decision from Justice Germain stayed, which means it doesn't actually apply until we're having the appeal heard and there's a decision on that. So if the decision is upheld, then the decision comes back into force. So we'll have that heard hopefully in short order, the application to stay that decision, and then the appeal will be a lengthy process. There's a lot of steps with appeal. It's quite complicated, and it's a very particular procedure. So it takes 9 to 12 months to get there.
And so what are the fundamental grounds? I mean, obviously, like you said, it's a very detailed case, but what are the main grounds and what are the main points of concern in the sentencing that you're appealing?
So the first one, the most obvious one that everybody is talking about, is the compelled speech, right? The requirement to say this specific blurb that mirrors Justice Germain's opinions about things, but does not mirror the Pawlowskis. So we have a serious concern about that, a serious concern about whether or not that's constitutional or not. But in addition to that, I mean, it's the same thing that I've been harping on since, frankly, May 10th when we had the release hearing, which is the police should not have arrested the Pawlowskis. Church was over. There was no further public health risk going on with them going home for the rest of the weekend. That arrest was completely arbitrary and unnecessary, and amounted to nearly 3 days detention. In a criminal procedure, they would have had a bail hearing within 24 hours. When Artur was arrested on his return, he had a bail hearing within 7, right? That's what we should be seeing, and instead we had them detained for 3 hours. That charter breach, in my estimation, it's a Section 7 and Section 9 charter breach for arbitrary detention. That should result in this whole thing being thrown out, and in a best case scenario, that's what will happen. If not, if the contempt is upheld, which I don't think it should be, the entire sanction is just so unreasonable. There's no basis to find that they should have been subject to any kind of incarceration. They got 3 days time served, right? But there shouldn't be any incarceration period. The fines imposed are far larger than comparable cases, right? I think the most comparable case was like $1,000 up to $3,000, right? And we're looking at $30,000 worth of fines between two individuals who are supposedly in contempt of an order for a couple hours.
So this is not only an appeal to the sentencing, this is an appeal to the original ruling of guilty on contempt as well?
Yes, absolutely. So we filed our notice of appeal on both matters, the contempt finding itself. Those who have been following along with the story know that Justice Rook, he issues this order. He says Christopher Scott, Glenn Carrott, those acting under their instructions in concert with them or independently to like effect, right? So that to me indicates something besides all Albertans. Right? You want an order to apply to all Albertans, you say all Albertans. You don't use that language. So Justice Germain said independently to like effect meant anybody breaching a public health order. That's a very broad interpretation of independently to like effect. I don't think that was the right decision. We're going to appeal that part. We're also just going to appeal the entirety of the contempt, the entirety of the sanction. Hopefully the Court of Appeal gives this some really serious consideration, sets aside maybe what they might think they know about Artur Pawlowski and David Pawlowski, and actually think about what this means for Albertans.
And in a broader perspective, there's been some questionable judicial proceedings, I think it's safe to say. That would be probably the first example where how those definitions were applied was very questionable. But in the latest court proceedings, some of the personal attacks, some of the comments, and then beyond that sort of personal stuff, there was at least the appearance that the cases that you listed and the court examples that you listed as precedent weren't even addressed in the written ruling by Justice Germain. Is this typical, or is this something to be concerned about?
Well, I think in this case it is something to be concerned about. It's not always something to be concerned about. A judge can't necessarily list every single case that's put in front of them between the two briefs, right? They get a bunch of cases from both sides. They can't mention every single one. The concerning part was that the sanction decision really lacked any consideration of case law on either side, and just came to a decision that Justice Germain thought was appropriate rather than what was appropriate based on some objective basis, right? That's why we have case law precedent. It was very concerning to me when he sat in court and said, well, the only comparable case in this circumstance is the one in Ontario, where it's really the third case in a series of cases, right? And I had already identified the first case in that series of cases and another church, and his response was something along the lines of, I'm only human, which of course he's only human, right? I mean, we don't expect our judges to be demigods, but certainly concerning that was overlooked and not considered fully. So we'll hopefully get another crack at the can at the Court of Appeal.
Wonderful. And certainly it would have been nice if Justice Adam Germain extended that only human wing of olive branch of peace to Pastor Artur Pawlowski, Chris Scott, and some of these other individuals who've been unfairly targeted. So there you have it. Rebel News, along with Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, will be in court and will be appealing this troubling ruling from the very beginning. We're going to go back to the original finding of guilty on contempt charges, as well as the troubling and unsettling sentencing, including compelled speech. We will be fighting those, but we can't do that without your help. We need you to go to saveartur.com now. You can make a contribution to help with these legal fees. As always, I want to thank you for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. If you want to support Pastor Artur Pawlowski, you can do so very easily by going to saveartur.com now and contributing to his legal defense. Pastor Artur has been in court time and time again, but this appeal is fundamental and vital to his defense and to defending his rights as a pastor in Canada. So please, go to saveartur.com.